This episode of Titans is titled Doom Patrol, and it's all about the Doom Patrol, and I think it's an excellent episode. And I say that not just because I'm a Doom Patrol fan and a DC fan, I just think it was very well done. A good introduction to these characters and how, they're a part of this connected universe between Titans and Doom Patrol, and maybe presumably like Swamp Thing in the other future DC Universe shows. I know they said Swamp Thing's not going to be in the same universe as Titans and Doom Patrol, but I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way, if all these shows are successful later on, to cross over some kind of way, and I think it'd be great. Especially Doom Patrol and the Swamp Thing, I think they could work well together, because they're both about, horror and dysfunctional things. But anyways, back to this episode. Let me look at my notes here. The first thing that I want to talk about, I have an order of things. We get the origin of Beast Boy in this episode. It opens, with him in the Congo, suffering from Sakusha, just like in the comics, and, the Chief having to rescue him and cure him. In the comics, though, it wasn't the Chief who cured Beast Boy of Sakusha and wound up giving him his powers. It was his parents. His father was like a geneticist, and he did it to save his son's life. The Chief didn't have the Doom Patrol didn't have anything to do with creating Beast Boy. He was already Beast Boy before he met up with them. But I guess, because of the TV show and its live action, they try to connect everything. So they've altered Beast Boy's origin to tie him more closely to the Doom Patrol and to make everything fit more neatly under an umbrella. But it was cool. It was all great. And then the next we see him, that's a flashback. And in present day, he's met up with Raven in the woods, and they run into those hunters. He's a tiger, a green tiger, and then he changes into, a live boy or a young man. And they actually spent the money on the effects. I know when we first got these leaks and, other things of the Titans before, when we saw them in those outfits that weren't really their costumes, that were controversial, I was thinking that they weren't going to spend the money on having Beast Boy actually transform into animals. That he was going to be like Vixen, have animal abilities, but not actually morph into anything. Like they didn't have the budget for it. But they do, we saw later trailers and stuff, and we saw him transform. And then we saw him transform in the show, in the third episode, I think, when he was in that video game, that store, rating the video games. And we see it again here. And it just reminded me, seeing it in this fourth episode, that, they spent money on the effects. Now, you can tell they're totally computer effects, but it's better than, I don't know, I thought they looked all right for a TV show. They looked decent. And, I'm just interested to see what they'll have him transform into more. I know he said later on that his base form, what he likes normally, I think, is to be a tiger or whatever. So I'm wondering, to save money, they'll have him always kind of be the same animals over and over again throughout the show. I don't know. I don't run TV shows. I don't know what a TV show budget is, but it's probably cheaper than having Beast Boy turn into 3 new animals every episode of the season. He can just be a tiger, a bird, and a cat, and that's it, or a dog. Just do 4 things and just do it consistent the whole way. No, I'm kidding. I don't know what they're doing. But anyways, cool. I'm being sarcastic, but I thought it was awesome. Cool. More Beast Boy, more, animal effects. I think you did a good job with the tiger here. I'm not trying to trash you. And we did see, I think, in this episode with the deer, Raven's first display of her healing powers, and she can heal injuries. I don't think she can heal severe injuries in the comics, but she can heal lighter wounds, at least in the earlier 80s comics. She could, we saw her heal the deer, and I think she's totally, but she doesn't know, I think, she can heal physical injuries yet, because we didn't see the deer come back to life or whatever until after she and Beast Boy had left. So I don't think Raven knew what she had done. But I think Raven's totally going to wind up being the person to heal Dove. Dove is in a coma after, the nuclear family beat her up. And, I think Raven might be the one to bring her back. And actually, because she brought the deer back in this episode, I'm thinking Raven is maybe more powerful in the show than she was in the comics. The old comics. Because I don't remember Raven having the power to bring people back from, or animals back from the dead, did she? I haven't read every single Raven appearance, so I'm sure someone will be typing in the comments, no, she brought somebody back to life in this issue, whatever. Okay. But I don't remember her being that powerful. Or maybe that deer wasn't really dead. It was close to death or whatever. But, if so, she's a really, great healer, isn't she? Later on, when Robin and Starfire are confronting the hunter that, Raven and Beast Boy encountered earlier in the episode, Robin beats, the crap out of the guy, and Starfire has to, calm Robin down and stop him from beating the guy. Maybe to death or close to death in front of his son. Robin didn't know his son was there. He didn't know that he was beating a man up in front of his little boy. It was excessive force, excessive violence. And yeah, this is definitely, I like the show, but Robin and Dick Grayson is very out of character. It's like, this isn't your father's Robin. And, that is weird. And I thought it was funny that Starfire is the one to tell him, like, you're going too far. Because the Starfire in this show is pretty brutal and violent herself. And, like, if even that Starfire thinks you're going too far, like, you're going way too far. I thought that was funny. Like, they had Starfire, the violent, brutal, darker Starfire, be the one to tell Robin, you're being too violent. I thought that was kind of ironic here. And now on to the centerpiece of the episode, the Doom Patrol. And in this show, they really do emphasize and highlight the fact that they are like the dysfunctional version of the X-Men, right? They live in like this huge mansion, set out somewhere. They're assembled and they're under the caretaker of a, seemingly benevolent benefactor who's very smart, like the Chief. Although, I'm not trying to say that Professor X in the comics is like, in the movies, is like the Chief. The Chief in this show is much darker than the Professor is. Although in later X-Men comic books, they retcon Professor X into being kind of a jerk. But, the Chief in this episode, and probably throughout his tenure in DC Universe shows, the Doom Patrol show, they've definitely gone with a darker version of the Chief. We see, like, in the scene when he is chastising Beast Boy about, potentially exposing the Doom Patrol by bringing Raven here. I think they tried to make him seem kind of menacing in that scene. But I don't know, I kind of saw him as kind of like a stern, I don't know, I think a lot of like parental figures might be kind of pissed. So I didn't really think that, I think the show was trying to portray him as being like going too far when he was, reprimanding Beast Boy, but I didn't see it that way. But we did see, him actually be evil or whatever when he was doing his experiments on Raven, going too far, forcing the confrontation with Beast Boy and stuff. And then I did notice when I first talked about the Doom Patrol episode and an earlier episode, the stills, the leaked photos, how the Chief was walking around, right? And I was like, that's not like the comics. But in the show, when Raven attacks the Chief in this episode, they say, oh, he hurt his back again because, Raven with her soul self hurt him in self-defense. So he's back to being in a wheelchair, just like in the comics. He's been injured by Raven after going too far in the experimentation table. So, just like in the comics, this version of the Chief is pretty sinister and more manipulative, I think, than he was in the original 60s comics. And going back to the dysfunctional nature of the Doom Patrol versus the X-Men, the Doom Patrol X-Men, the X-Men, they were people who were freaks because they were born that way. But here, the Doom Patrol are freaks because of accidents that happened to them. Like, they were regular people, with regular people's lives. And in some cases, successful lives, a successful race car driver, a successful actress. And then things happen to them, injuries that ruin their lives and their careers. They got superpowers, but the superpowers are a curse. So they don't see themselves necessarily as bright, shiny superheroes. They see themselves as freaks of nature. And this episode pretty much captured that when, they were they showed it throughout the entire episode, but, the Chief kind of paraphrased it at the dinner table when he was talking about how he rescued each member and did experiments on them to try to help them and stuff like that. It was basically like he was giving a roll call of, the tragic version of the X-Men, sort of, kind of. Although the X-Men are pretty tragic themselves, but for a different reason. They're metaphors for people who are like, marginalized by society. Oppression, racism, homophobia and stuff. That's what the X-Men, I think, were metaphors for. The Doom Patrol are metaphors for people who have severe, like, disabilities or accidents or disfigurements, I guess you could say. So that's the commonality, I guess. And we also get very, like, into the spirit of comics in general. In a lot of stories, when two heroes meet or two teams meet, there's a misunderstanding and they're about to fight, right? And that actually happened in this episode when Robin and Starfire come to the Calder Mansion. And, Starfire, Robin leaves to find Raven, and Starfire stays, and the Doom Patrol, they're about to engage her. And, she's about to get into a fight, Starfire versus Negative Man and the others. And I thought about that, it's like a classic super team fight up, beat 'em up. They have a misunderstanding, they're about to fight, and maybe they fight for a little bit, but then they wind up teaming up, to get the same bad guy. We got sort of kind of that here, although the Doom Patrol and the Titans don't really team up in this episode, and they don't actually really fight that much. They're about to, but they don't. It would have been interesting to see, like, Raven, like, Starfire's, like, fire energy versus Negative Man's, negative energy. But, we didn't get that. We never got to see Negative Man actually use his powers in this episode. So I'm curious to see, when the Doom Patrol TV show comes on, how they'll realize that in live action, the way that they will make his negative energy come out. And yeah, a Negative Man versus Starfire would have been a pretty awesome fight. We didn't get to see it, but it was about to happen, and I was curious, like, are they gonna go there? They didn't go there. But I was excited. I wanted to see it. I also thought it was cute at the dinner table. I'll move on to Robot Man voiced by Brendan Fraser. I thought it was cute at the table when, he was talking when Raven was first getting introduced to them at dinner. And he says, oh, who's going to dance with this? And she's like, oh, I'll do the robot with you. And she does the robot motion. I thought that was cute. And, it was nice to hear Brendan Fraser's voice. I remember when I was younger, I liked Brendan Fraser in like The Mummy and George of the Jungle. And it was nice to hear him. I was like, welcome back, Brendan Fraser, in Doom Patrol. Another sci-fi fantasy property I can enjoy him in. And, his voice and Matt Bomer's voice for Negative Man there in this episode. And the other actors who were cast originally, like Dwayne Murphy was cast to play Negative Man, the body of Negative Man in Under the Bandages. And I forgot the other guy's name, who was supposed to play Robot Man in the suit. I guess they originally hired just to be, the bodies to begin with. And they were just going to like edit in people's voices over them because, we never get to hear either of those men say anything. It's all like Brendan Fraser and Matt Bomer. So I guess from the beginning, they were always going to do this. And those dudes knew when they were hired, they were only going to be, it was a one-time gig. But oh well, money's money. I am happy, though, that Brendan Fraser's Robot Man, and I'm sure I will be happy, with Matt Bomer continuing on as Negative Man. I thought the most tragic Doom Patrol member was Elasti-woman, played by April Bowlby. They did a great job, And I was right. Before, in my last video that I mentioned before, related to the Titans and Doom Patrol, the stills I discussed, I noticed how Rita Farr, the character she plays, always looks like an old-time actress, the way she's dressed, the way her hair's styled. And she actually is. They mentioned this episode, and when they show the picture frames of her in her old movies and the posters, she was like a classic movie actress. And I guess whatever accident gave her powers over her body, they messed up her body, but also, I guess, made it so that she didn't age or aged more slowly. Because if she was like an actress in her 20s and 30s, way back in like the 50s or like 30s films, she'd be a lot older now, but she's not. And I thought the fact that they showed, her having to struggle to keep her body composed, I felt bad for her. Especially since, she had a career as an actress, right? That's all, well, not all, but a lot of it's being judged by your appearance and stuff. And so if you have those kind of disabilities in that kind of career, you're not going to have probably much of a career. And, so that was too bad. Her struggling to maintain her composure, it's just like in the comics. Although in the later comics, originally like in the 60s comics, when she first gets her powers, she has trouble controlling them initially, but she gets control pretty quickly. And like Elasti-woman, out of all the members of the Doom Patrol, was the one who would look, the most beautiful. And she didn't have trouble like maintaining her composure. She could stretch and shrink and grow. Well, shrink and grow. But, her body wasn't like, decomposing or sagging in front of people. They didn't introduce that element to the character until decades later. When she had to like have a device to help her, when she went to sleep, keep her body under control. That was a later like retcon addition to the character. And I guess that's the version of the character they're going with in the show. But it works, them trying to hit home the idea that the Doom Patrol, they're fabulous freaks. That's how they were referred to in the 60s comics. These are the fabulous freaks. And in this show, they are the fabulous freaks. And there are shout outs to other like obscure Doom Patrol members. The lady that the chief is operating on that table, Shailene Lau, she was actually in the comics a member of the Doom Patrol named Fever with heat powers. She was an actual active member for like several issues. And, they used her in this episode to be the one who was operating in the table. I wonder if we'll see that character come back in the Doom Patrol series later. And then the Hunter, when he tells Robin and Starfire where, Raven could have been, like, oh, the nearby mansion's the Calder Mansion. He mentioned it's on Danny Street. And one of the later members of the Doom Patrol was Danny the Street. He was like a living street. It's hard to explain, but that a member of the Doom Patrol was actually like a sentient, brick street. Or not brick, but just a sentient road or street. It's hard to explain. You got to read the stuff, but cool. And there are probably a couple of other shout outs that I mentioned or whatever, because I don't get everything. But all in all, to sum it up, great episode. I mean, I loved it. I love seeing one of my favorite teams in live action for the first time. And I think they did a great job. I can't wait to see more. And of course, I like the Titans too. I know we're not going to see much of the Doom Patrol in the Titans TV show because it's not their show. But I can't wait until next year and we get that show. I think it'll be fabulous. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.